inside her shifts. It's a moment she never planned for, never wanted, never imagined for herself. But life has a way of taking us exactly where we don't want to go, because that is often the only route to where Allah needs us to be. There comes a day when the people she relied on become silent. The support she assumed would last suddenly disappears. The hand she was waiting for never reaches back to her. And in that moment of loneliness, hurt, and complete emotional exhaustion, she discovers something she had forgotten: that Allah was never absent, that He was never unaware, that He was never dependent on anyone else to carry her through what He Himself decreed for her. This realization doesn't come gently. It comes through disappointment, through betrayal, through heartbreak, through the weight of carrying more than she thinks she can handle. But once it comes, it wakes her up with a clarity she has never tasted before. And the woman who once waited for people now turns back to the one who was waiting for her all along. This is not a moment of defeat. It is the beginning of sincerity. When she learns that salvation, comfort, healing, and rescue do not come from the creation, they come from the Creator. And when Allah becomes her only refuge, that is when she rises in ways no human power could have ever given her. Every lesson she learns from here is connected to this awakening. Each one is a step that takes her deeper into reliance, deeper into faith, and deeper into the strength that comes when a woman finally walks with Allah instead of chasing people. The first lesson is the truth she resisted for years: that people are not capable of carrying her pain, and they were never designed to save her. The second is the moment she understands why Allah removes support, because He wants her heart to return to Him. The third is learning how to stand again with a faith that no longer depends on human approval or presence. The fourth is accepting that hardship is not punishment, it is purification. The fifth is the strength that grows quietly inside her when she learns to rely on Allah without needing validation from the world. The sixth is the understanding that what Allah takes away is often something that was limiting her growth. And the final lesson is that true peace only enters her life when she stops expecting people to fill the space that belongs to Allah alone. All seven are woven together. They form one journey, one transformation, one complete shift inside her heart. And now we begin unfolding them one by one. The first truth a woman has to face, often unwillingly, is that people cannot carry what she hoped they would. It is painful because she didn't arrive at this realization casually. She arrived here after trying, after trusting, after giving chances she thought were reasonable, after telling herself that this time will be different, this person will be different, this relationship, this friendship, this support system will be the one that finally holds. But reality has a way of showing her, sometimes gently and sometimes abruptly, that human beings were never designed to hold the weight she placed on them. It's not because people are all bad. It's not because everyone is malicious. Most people are limited, distracted, preoccupied, or simply incapable. They have their own wounds, their own fears, their own exhaustion. They cannot rescue her because many of them are barely holding themselves together. When she finally understands this, it hurts first. It feels like loss. It feels like abandonment. It feels like she is being pushed into loneliness. But this is where her heart begins to see a reality she has ignored for years. Allah never asked her to expect from people what only He provides. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "If you ask, ask Allah, and if you seek help from Allah." This is not a theoretical statement. It is not meant to be recited with admiration only. It is meant to be lived. And a woman usually learns to live it when life forces her to. When she has exhausted every human option. When she has repeated her pain to people who could not understand it. When she has tried to lean on shoulders that eventually moved away. When she has searched for someone to notice her struggle, only to be met with silence. Allah allows these moments not to break her, but to detach her from relying on the wrong source. A heart that depends on people for emotional survival will always be disappointed. A heart that depends on Allah may feel pain, but it will never collapse. Allah says in the Quran that He is the best guardian and the best helper. These are not poetic descriptions. These are realities that a woman experiences when human support fails her and she is forced to walk a path she never wanted to walk alone. But what she discovers on that path is that she is not actually alone. The pain she feels in this stage comes from her expectations. She expected people to understand without explanation. She expected loyalty from those who were not stable within themselves. She expected commitment from those who could not commit even to their own betterment. She expected emotional presence from those who were emotionally absent even from their own lives. These expectations were not sinful. They were human, but they were also misplaced. Allah knows the exact moment her heart breaks under the weight of those expectations. And He knows that this is the moment where her real growth begins. Not when everything is easy, not when she has support, not when she feels protected by people. Her growth begins when Allah closes the doors she depended on, so He can open the door she ignored, the door to Him. At first, she resists this. She tries again. She keeps knocking on the same doors. She keeps explaining herself to people who will never truly hear her. She keeps searching for comfort in the same places that have disappointed her. This is part of the journey. Allah lets her reach that emotional exhaustion so she finally sees the truth without denial. No human being can fill what Allah left empty in her heart for a reason. There is a moment, often quiet and unannounced, when she stops trying to be understood by everyone. She stops chasing reassurance. She stops waiting for someone to come and fix what is breaking inside her. She finally sits with her own reality and says, "No one can help me now except Allah." And that statement, though heavy, is the beginning of her strength. Because she is no longer running after people. She is turning toward the one who runs the affairs of every heart. Allah never disappoints a woman who comes to Him sincerely. He may test her patience, stretch her faith, and delay the outcome she desires, but He never abandons her. People leave, people change, people forget. Allah does not. When He says He is near, that He responds to the caller, that He is the protector of the believers, He means it in every situation she faces. And once she feels the relief that comes from relying on Him, she begins to see how much unnecessary pain she carried by relying on people instead. This lesson is not about isolating herself. It's not about mistrusting everyone. It's about shifting her foundational dependence. It's about placing her emotional security in the only place that can sustain it. When she learns this, she interacts with people differently. She loves them without worshiping them. She values them without expecting perfection. She appreciates their presence without building her survival around it. And when they fail her, she does not collapse, because her anchor is not in their hands. This shift is transformative. It is the quiet birth of inner resilience. She becomes less reactive to people's flaws, less shaken by their inconsistency, less emotionally vulnerable to their absence, because she is no longer expecting them to save her. She has learned that salvation is a gift from Allah alone. And once she learns this lesson deeply, sincerely, and painfully, the rest of her journey unfolds with clarity she didn't have before. The next lessons build on this foundation, but this is where everything begins. Recognizing that no human being, no matter how sincere, can replace the role Allah has in her life. Once a woman accepts that people cannot carry what she hoped they would, the next truth rises slowly but unmistakably. Allah removes support for a reason. Nothing in her life collapses randomly. No relationship fades without purpose. No person drifts away except by the permission of the one who knows what she doesn't. But understanding this on a deep level is not easy, because the first reaction of the heart is pain, confusion, or even a sense of injustice. She asks herself why the very people she relied on became distant, why certain doors closed when she needed them most, why the world suddenly felt heavier and emptier at the same time. And underneath those questions lies the real one. Why would Allah allow this? She doesn't ask it out of rebellion. She asks it because she is human. She is hurting. She is searching for meaning in a situation that seems senseless. But this is where the mercy of Allah often shows itself in the most unexpected way, by taking away what would have kept her spiritually stagnant, by detaching her from anyone she was leaning on more than she leaned on Him, by removing the illusions she built her emotional life around. Allah does not remove people or support to punish her. He removes them to redirect her heart back to the place it belongs. There is a verse in the Quran where Allah says that He is closer to the human being than his jugular vein. Yet closeness does not always feel like comfort. Sometimes closeness feels like Allah intervening, reshaping the circumstances of her life and dismantling the things she depended on, because those very dependencies were blocking her connection with Him. She thought she was losing stability, but Allah was clearing space for a deeper kind of stability, one that is not tied to a person, a promise, or a relationship. At first, she resists the shift. She feels anger toward those who left. She feels abandoned by those she trusted. She feels exposed, as if life took away her shelter. But this is where she begins to see the wisdom behind Allah's actions. People leave because they are limited. Allah allows them to leave because He is not. Some relationships end because they were taking her away from her own growth. Some friendships dissolve because they were built on emotional dependence instead of spiritual clarity. Some sources of support collapse because she was holding them tighter than she held on to Allah. Allah does not create emptiness to harm her. He creates emptiness to make space for truth. If the people she depended on stayed forever, she would never discover how deeply she needed Allah. If the temporary support remained, she would never reach for the permanent. And if the distractions continued to comfort her, she would never experience the sweetness of relying on the one who never disappears. There is a common assumption many women have, that losing someone means losing safety. But Allah reminds her through experience, sometimes a painful one, that safety cannot come from someone who is temporary. True safety comes from the one whose care is not influenced by mood, circumstance, or human weakness. The moment she truly absorbs this, she stops interpreting loss as punishment. She begins to interpret it as protection. Allah protects her from what she cannot see. He protects her from people whose presence would have harmed her heart. He protects her from hopes that would have led to disappointment. He protects her from depending on someone who would eventually break her trust. She sees this much later, usually after time passes, but Allah sees it before it happens, which is why He intervenes, even when she begs Him not to. The same support she cried for might have taken her further away from Him. The same person she chased might have drained her spiritually. The same comfort she wanted might have made her forget her true purpose. This realization is not instant. It unfolds slowly, often through tears, silence, and long moments of reflection. She notices that after every loss, something inside her becomes clearer. She becomes more honest with herself, more aware of her emotional patterns, more awake to the reality that no matter how deeply she tries to hold on to people, Allah is the one holding on to her. When she looks back on her life, she can identify patterns. Every time someone left, she grew. Every time she was disappointed, she learned. Every time she felt alone, she discovered parts of herself she didn't know existed. And every time a door closed, her relationship with Allah took a step forward. This is why true trust begins here. Not when life is easy, not when she is surrounded by support. Trust begins when Allah removes the things she relied on and waits to see if she will lean toward Him or collapse into despair. This lesson transforms her because it shifts her perspective. She no longer asks, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, she asks, "What is Allah protecting me from?" This single shift changes everything. It replaces resentment with reflection, confusion with clarity, and fear with acceptance. She learns to say, "If Allah removed it, then it was never meant to be my support. And if Allah removed them, then they were never meant to carry my heart." This surrender does not make her passive. It makes her grounded. She no longer clings desperately to people out of fear of losing them. She no longer imagines that her stability depends on someone else's presence. She no longer sees loss as the end, but as a turning point. Allah removes what holds her back so He can give her what will lift her forward. And the woman who understands this will walk into the next chapter of her life with a heart that finally sees the difference between depending on the creation and depending on the Creator. Once a woman accepts that Allah removes support for a purpose, she enters the part of the journey most people never reach, learning how to stand again without depending on human approval, validation, or presence. This is not a loud stage. It is quiet, slow, and often misunderstood. From the outside, it may look like she is simply moving on, but internally she is rebuilding a foundation she should have built long ago. This is where Allah teaches her to stand with dignity, with clarity, and with a reliance that is rooted in Him, not in people. In the beginning, she doesn't feel strong. She feels fragile, unsure, and emotionally exposed. She feels like she is trying to rebuild herself with hands that are still shaking, and that is exactly the point. Allah does not ask her to rise when she feels powerful. He asks her to rise when she feels weak, because that is when she realizes that her strength comes from Him, not from her own independence. True strength begins the moment she admits she has none except what Allah gives her. There is a subtle shift that happens inside her here. She stops waiting for certain people to apologize. She stops expecting others to finally understand what she went through. She stops trying to explain her pain to those who were never meant to hear it. She stops hoping that someone will come and affirm that she deserved better. This is the emotional detachment that frees her, because she realizes if she keeps waiting for closure from people, she will stay stuck in the same chapter forever. Allah wants her to close that chapter by turning to Him, not by chasing explanations from those who already showed her their limits. Standing again means she must rebuild her inner life with new rules. She interacts with people, but she doesn't hand them the authority to define her. She appreciates their kindness, but she doesn't depend on it for emotional survival. She listens to their words, but she measures them against truth, not desperation. This shift does not make her cold, it makes her wise. It allows her to love people without depending on them, to care about them without losing herself, and to engage with the world without worshipping its approval. Allah teaches her something profound in this stage, that she does not need everyone to understand her journey. The one who wrote her story understands it perfectly. She does not need everyone to stay. The one who remains with her in every moment is enough. She does not need recognition from others. Allah sees the effort no one else notices. He hears the silent prayers she whispers when the world is asleep. He knows the nights she cried, the days she pushed through, the wounds she carried without complaining. When she remembers this, she begins to stand not with pride, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. This certainty does not appear suddenly. It grows slowly through practice. When she chooses Allah over her frustration, when she chooses patience over reaction, when she chooses dignity over emotional chaos, when she chooses to walk away from conversations that drain her, when she chooses to let go of those who refuse to grow, every one of these choices strengthens a spiritual muscle she didn't know she had. And over time, she notices that she is no longer falling apart at things that used to break her. She no longer trembles when someone walks away. She no longer feels lost when plans fall apart. She is learning to stand with Allah, and that is a kind of strength that cannot be taken from her. Allah does not abandon the woman who tries to rise for His sake. He supports her in ways she never expected. He gives her calm in moments where she used to panic. He gives her clarity in situations that once confused her. He gives her emotional stability in places that once triggered her deepest insecurities. But she only receives this when she stops relying on people to hold her up. There is a verse where Allah says that He strengthens the believers with a firm word. This strength reaches her when she chooses Him over the temporary comfort she sought before. Standing again also means redefining what strength even is. For years, she believed strength meant being in control, keeping everything together, never breaking down, never needing help. Now she realizes real strength looks nothing like that. Real strength is the ability to stay connected to Allah when everything else falls apart. Real strength is choosing obedience when her emotions push her toward impulsiveness. Real strength is trusting Allah's plan even when it conflicts with her desires. Real strength is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to walk through pain without letting it pull her away from her Lord. During this stage, Allah also reveals what was false inside her heart. The beliefs she clung to, the expectations she held, the illusions she lived through. He allows her to see who she was before this journey began, dependent, anxious, longing for validation, waiting for people to complete what only Allah could. This reflection can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary, because to stand again, she must acknowledge who she used to be and consciously choose who she wants to become. And she becomes someone different, someone quieter inside, someone less reactive, someone who doesn't rush into relationships out of fear of loneliness, someone who doesn't lower her standards out of desperation, someone who doesn't apologize for having boundaries, someone who no longer begs for emotional crumbs, someone who rises with a confidence that is earned through hardship, not manufactured by ego. By the time she learns to stand with Allah, she is a woman others cannot shake easily, because the foundation beneath her is no longer made of unstable human promises. It is built on the one who never breaks his promise. And when a woman stands with Allah, she rises not only for herself, but in worship, in growth, in sincerity, and in peace. This lesson prepares her for the next one, where she learns that hardship itself is not punishment, but a purification designed to elevate her. When a woman finally stands again with Allah as her anchor, the next truth unfolds with a depth she was not prepared for. Hardship is not punishment, it is purification. This is one of the most challenging lessons for the heart, because pain naturally makes a person wonder what they did wrong. When life becomes heavy, when losses stack on top of each other, when the path becomes unclear, it's easy for even a sincere believer to ask, why me? But Allah, in His mercy, teaches her that pain is often a sign of His attention, not His anger. It is a sign of refinement, not rejection. There is a narration where the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that when Allah loves a person, He tests them. A woman who hears this at a distance may think she understands it, but when the test reaches her personally, that understanding collapses. Her immediate thought is not about love, it's about survival. It's about loss, confusion, and exhaustion. But as she walks through the difficulty, something begins to shift. Gradually, she starts to see that her hardship is removing things she should have let go long ago. It is peeling away layers she hid behind layers of attachment, fear, pride, or illusion. It is revealing parts of her heart she never examined, and it is exposing the exact weaknesses she needs to strengthen, to grow closer to Allah. At first, she fights the hardship. She prays for it to disappear. She negotiates with her own emotions. She tries to control the situation. She tries to return everything to the way it used to be. This is a natural response. No one embraces difficulty instantly, but Allah allows the test to stay long enough for her to begin seeing what she was blind to before. Hardship makes her pause. It forces reflection. It forces honesty. It forces her to stop relying on superficial solutions and turn inward, then upward. Hardship shows her who she is without comfort, without distraction, without approval, without human support. And that is a truth many people spend their entire lives avoiding. But Allah, in His mercy, brings her to this truth through personal experience. She learns that purification is not about removing joy from her life. It is about removing the parts of her heart that block her connection with Allah. And sometimes those parts are deeply ingrained habits, beliefs, or emotional wounds that cannot be dissolved through ease. They require pressure, they require discomfort, they require transformation. There is a verse in the Quran where Allah says that He does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. She has heard this verse before. She may have even repeated it to others, but now she is living it. The test she is facing feels heavy, but it is perfectly tailored to her capacity, not her imagined capacity, not her desired capacity, but her real capacity, the capacity Allah knows better than she does. Hardship reveals that she is stronger than she thought. It shows her that she can endure more than she expected. It teaches her that she can walk through pain while still holding on to faith. And purification comes in layers. Sometimes the first layer is letting go of illusions about people. The next layer is letting go of illusions about herself. Then comes letting go of illusions about the world. She begins to see life with more clarity. She recognizes what truly matters and what never did. She sees that her heart was attached to things that were temporary. She sees that she expected too much from what was fragile. She sees that she gave her trust to people who could not carry it. And through all of this, Allah is refining her, not to break her, but to prepare her for what He has written next. Another part of purification is confronting her own inner contradictions. She realizes that some of her pain came from expectations she should not have had. Some came from ignoring signs Allah showed her early. Some came from holding on to what was harmful. This does not mean she blames herself. It simply means she grows. She becomes more self-aware, more spiritually awake, more aligned with truth. Hardship became the mirror she avoided looking into, and now it is showing her what she needs to fix, not to shame her, but to elevate her. Most importantly, hardship purifies her relationship with Allah. Before the test, her prayers may have been rushed. Her reliance may have been mixed with dependence on people. Her trust may have been conditional. But hardship has a way of softening arrogance, cleaning the ego, and humbling the heart. She begins to call on Allah not from habit, but from need, not from routine, but from sincerity. And this is one of the greatest gifts hidden inside difficulty. It turns her into a woman whose heart faces Allah directly. A purified heart is not one without pain. It is one that knows what to do with pain. It carries its wounds to Allah instead of hiding them behind strength that is only external. It finds meaning even in tears. It finds purpose even in disappointment. And it finds closeness to Allah in moments where there is no one else to turn to. Hardship also detaches her from the illusion that life is supposed to feel comfortable all the time. She realizes that the greatest women mentioned in the Quran were shaped through difficulty. Maryam faced isolation and accusation. Hajar stood alone in the desert with her child. Ashia lived in the palace of a tyrant but kept her heart with Allah. Their hardships did not diminish their worth, they revealed it. And when she sees this, she understands that her own trials are part of a lineage of purification Allah uses to elevate the believers. This understanding does not erase her pain. It gives it purpose, it gives it shape, it gives it direction. And from that purpose, she gains resilience that cannot be shaken by future disappointments. She stops seeing hardship as something that destroys her and starts seeing it as something that rebuilds her more sincerely. When a woman realizes that hardship is purification, she walks through it differently. She stops resisting every moment of difficulty. She stops seeing herself as a victim of circumstance. She begins to see herself as someone Allah is refining, preparing, and elevating. And this mindset becomes the foundation for the next lesson. The strength that grows quietly and consistently inside her when she learns to rely on Allah without needing validation from anyone else. As hardship purifies her, something begins to grow inside her quietly. So quietly, she doesn't even recognize it at first. It is not loud strength. It is not confidence built from compliments or validation. It is not the kind of strength people notice instantly. It is a spiritual strength that forms in silence, in private moments with Allah, in the places where no one is watching. This is the strength that comes from relying on Allah alone. And it is unlike any strength she has ever known, because it is not built on human approval or praise. It is built on truth. Before this journey, she relied heavily on what others thought. She cared about how she was perceived. She looked for reassurance in the reactions of people. A kind word could lift her, and one careless comment could break her. Her emotional stability was tied to external forces she did not control. But as she walks through hardship and learns to place her trust in Allah, something shifts deep inside her. She stops building her life on the unstable ground of human opinions. She begins to build it on the one who knows her worth without needing to be told. This strength doesn't arrive with a dramatic moment. It arrives quietly, like the steady forming of dawn after a long night. She notices that she no longer panics when someone disapproves of her decisions. She no longer breaks when someone withdraws their affection or support. She no longer shapes her choices around who will approve or criticize. She becomes someone who moves with intention, not insecurity. And this shift is not arrogance, it is clarity. She understands now that pleasing Allah is a goal she can actually achieve, while pleasing people is a task that will exhaust her until the end of time. Allah says in the Quran that He is sufficient as a protector and sufficient as a helper. When a woman truly lives by this, she gains strength that external praise cannot create and external criticism cannot destroy. She becomes grounded, she becomes consistent. Her emotional life becomes more stable because she is no longer depending on something as fragile as human validation. She knows that if Allah is pleased with her, she is safe. And if He is not, then no amount of admiration from others can help her. This is where her strength begins to show in her behavior. She sets boundaries without fear. She says no without guilt. She walks away from situations that compromise her dignity. She chooses sincerity over popularity. She chooses modesty over attention. She chooses truth over comfort. These choices are not easy, but they are possible because her heart is no longer begging for approval from people who cannot define her. She also stops explaining herself excessively. A woman who relies on Allah doesn't need to justify her journey to those who do not understand it. She doesn't need to convince others of her intentions. She doesn't need to chase validation to feel secure in her decisions. Allah knows what is in her heart, and that knowledge is enough. This doesn't mean she becomes closed or harsh. It means she becomes intentional. She speaks when necessary. She stays silent when wisdom demands it. She no longer spends emotional energy trying to satisfy expectations that do not align with her purpose. This inner strength also shows itself in how she manages disappointment. The old version of her would spiral into self-doubt when someone pulled away or criticized her. She would question her worth and replay conversations, trying to decipher what she did wrong. But now, with Allah as her anchor, she sees things differently. If something leaves her life, she trusts it was removed for a reason. If someone distances themselves, she trusts that Allah is protecting her from what she cannot see. If plans collapse, she trusts that Allah's timing is precise, even if she does not understand it yet. This quiet strength manifests in her relationship with herself. She stops being her own enemy. She speaks to herself with honesty, not cruelty. She corrects herself without tearing herself apart. She forgives herself where she used to punish herself. For the first time, she begins to see her own heart with compassion, knowing that Allah sees her efforts even when others only see her mistakes. And the most profound part of this transformation is that it remains largely invisible to others. People may not notice how she has changed, but she sees it. She feels it in the way she responds instead of reacts. She feels it in the calm that replaces panic. She feels it in the patience that replaces desperation. She feels it in the certainty that replaces fear. This is the strength Allah grows inside the believing woman, not to make her unreachable or proud, but to make her aligned with Him. Her reliance on Allah also protects her from the emotional instability that comes from seeking constant validation. She no longer needs the world to tell her she is enough. She no longer waits for someone to applaud her efforts. She no longer hopes to be noticed to feel valuable. Her worth is tied to the one who created her, guided her, and carried her through every moment she thought she wouldn't survive. This is a kind of empowerment that cannot be manipulated by people or shaken by circumstance. What she may not realize yet is that this strength sets the stage for another profound lesson, that sometimes what Allah removes is not a loss, but a form of protection. What she called heartbreak may have been mercy. What she saw as rejection may have been redirection. And what she thought was the end may be the beginning of something far greater than she imagined. The next lesson unfolds this truth with clarity. As her inner strength grows quietly through reliance on Allah alone, she begins to notice something she once overlooked. Not everything that leaves her life is a loss. Some things leave because Allah, in His mercy, is protecting her from what she cannot see. This realization does not come all at once. It unfolds slowly, usually after the emotional dust settles, after she has cried, questioned, reflected, and finally found enough distance to see her situation with honesty rather than attachment. What once felt like abandonment begins to look like safeguarding. What once felt like rejection begins to look like divine redirection. And what once felt like a painful ending begins to look like necessary release. In the early stages, she does not view it this way. She interprets separation as failure, the end of a relationship as a reflection of her inadequacy, the loss of a friendship as a sign that something is wrong with her. She blames herself. She tries to fix what was never meant to be fixed. She imagines that if she just tried harder, gave more, waited longer, things would turn out differently. This is normal. The heart takes time to detach. It takes time to see the truth beneath the emotional narratives it creates. But with Allah's guidance, she gradually begins to see the bigger picture. She looks back and notices that the person she was desperately holding on to did not bring out the best in her. She realizes that the relationship she thought she needed was actually draining her spiritually, emotionally, or even morally. She sees that the door that closed was preventing her from walking into something better. It becomes clear that Allah did not remove these things to hurt her. He removed them to protect her. Allah protects a woman from people whose presence would have harmed her heart, even if she couldn't recognize the danger at the time. He protects her from situations she thought she wanted, but which would have weakened her character or delayed her growth. He protects her from paths that would have led her away from Him. When she sees this with clarity, gratitude begins to replace regret. This does not mean she stops grieving. Loss still hurts. Missing someone is still human. Feeling confused or disappointed is still natural. But the grief becomes lighter when she recognizes that Allah sees beyond the present moment. He sees the consequences she cannot see. He sees the emotional traps she would have fallen into. He sees the long-term effects of choices she would have made out of fear, loneliness, or desperation. When Allah protects her, it is not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like a closed door. Sometimes it looks like unanswered prayers. Sometimes it looks like a sudden ending. But all of it carries the same meaning: mercy. There is a moment in her journey when she reflects on what she prayed for in the past. She remembers the things she begged Allah to keep for her, the relationships she pleaded to save, the outcomes she insisted were best for her life. And now, with time and clarity, she realizes how different her life would have been if Allah had granted every one of those requests. She sees that what she called disappointment was actually protection. The very things she cried over losing were the things Allah was removing to make room for something pure, healthier, and more aligned with her purpose. One of the most powerful shifts happens when she stops asking, "Why did this leave me?" and starts asking, "What was Allah saving me from?" This question changes the emotional landscape of her heart. It replaces self-blame with understanding. It replaces confusion with wisdom. It replaces bitterness with acceptance. She realizes she was never being deprived. She was being redirected. This shift also teaches her to trust Allah in real time, not just in hindsight. It is easy to understand Allah's wisdom after years have passed. But true faith is built when she learns to trust Him while the loss is happening, while the separation is unfolding, while her heart is still breaking. Standing in that moment and saying, Allah sees what I cannot, is the heart of tawakkul. And when she does this, her heart begins to relax. She begins to surrender, not in defeat, but in submission to the one who knows the unseen. Another layer of this lesson is recognizing that sometimes Allah protects her from herself, from her impulses, from her emotional vulnerabilities, from her tendency to overlook red flags, from her desire to hold on to what is familiar, even when it is harmful. Allah in His mercy intervenes. He blocks what she would have chosen out of weakness and replaces it with what she would choose if she saw the truth clearly. This understanding changes the way she views her past. It softens her regrets. It quiets her self-criticism. It frees her from believing she made unforgivable mistakes. She begins to see that Allah was guiding her, even when she wasn't aware, even when she chose the wrong people, even when she stayed in the wrong situations, even when she ignored the signs. Allah protected her not because she did everything right, but because His mercy is greater than her misjudgments. When a woman recognizes divine protection in her losses, she becomes more confident in her decisions moving forward. She becomes more careful with what she allows into her life. She becomes more selective with whom she trusts. She becomes more aware of her heart's vulnerabilities. She is no longer driven by loneliness or fear. She learns to pause, to pray, to seek clarity from Allah before seeking comfort from people. This is the maturity that comes from being protected. By the time she fully absorbs this lesson, her relationship with Allah deepens in a way she cannot describe. She becomes grateful for the doors that closed. She becomes grateful for the people who left. She becomes grateful for the prayers that were answered with silence. Because now she sees what she could not see before, that every protection was a form of love. This prepares her for the next and final lesson, discovering the peace that enters her heart when she stops expecting people to fill a place that was always meant for Allah alone. When a woman finally understands that what Allah removes is often a form of protection, a new kind of peace begins to enter her life, one she has never experienced before. This peace does not come from the absence of hardship. It does not come from people suddenly behaving better or circumstances becoming easier. It comes from a shift inside her heart. She stops expecting people to fill a space that belongs exclusively to Allah. And once she stops expecting the wrong things from the wrong places, she no longer feels the constant disappointment that once controlled her emotional world. This peace is not instant. It grows slowly, like a seed planted deep within her through every lesson she has learned on this journey. At first, it feels strange. She is so used to seeking comfort in people that relying on Allah feels almost unfamiliar, even though it is the most natural and rightful dependence she could have. But as she practices it, turning to Allah instead of turning to people, trusting His plan instead of chasing validation, she begins to taste a kind of serenity that no human presence has ever given her. What surprises her most is how light her heart becomes when she stops handing it to people who cannot carry it. She realizes that much of her pain came from expecting human beings to provide what they were never designed to provide. People were not created to constantly reassure her, to never disappoint her, to always be available, to understand her without explanation, to remain stable while they themselves struggle. Expecting this from them was unfair to them and harmful to her. But now, with clarity, she sees that relying on Allah brings both compassion and balance. It allows her to love people without losing herself in them. When she stops expecting others to complete her emotionally, she becomes more present, more authentic, and more grounded. She no longer enters relationships from a place of neediness. She enters them from a place of stability. She no longer clings to people out of fear. She connects with them out of sincerity. She no longer tolerates harmful behavior to avoid being alone. She understands that loneliness with Allah is better than company without peace. This shift changes every relationship she has. She listens without assuming responsibility for fixing everyone's pain. She gives without expecting anything in return. She forgives without allowing herself to be mistreated. She supports others while maintaining her own boundaries. She becomes more compassionate, not less. But her compassion is now guided by wisdom, not by desperation. She no longer feels compelled to overextend herself emotionally in hopes of securing loyalty. She knows that hearts are in Allah's hands, not hers. One of the most profound changes she experiences is in how she handles disappointment. The old version of her would crumble when someone let her down. She would internalize their actions, blame herself, and spiral into overthinking. But now, with Allah as her source of security, disappointment becomes manageable. Not painless, but manageable. She acknowledges the hurt, but she does not let it define her worth. She reflects on the situation, but she does not let it control her self-image. She sees that when people fail her, Allah does not. When people leave, Allah remains. When people forget, Allah remembers. This knowledge stabilizes her heart. Another layer of peace comes from accepting that she cannot control everything. She cannot control who stays or leaves. She cannot control how others perceive her. She cannot control the timing of events or the outcomes of her efforts. But she can control her trust in Allah. She can control her choices, her reactions, her intentions. And these are the parts of life Allah holds her accountable for. When she lets go of the illusion of control and submits to Allah's plan, her mind becomes quieter. The constant internal battles lose their power. She breathes more deeply. She feels more aligned with her purpose. This is not resignation, it is spiritual maturity. This peace also teaches her humility. She realizes that just as she should not depend excessively on people, she also cannot expect perfection from them. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is broken in ways she cannot see. Everyone has their own journey with Allah. She stops demanding what others cannot give. She stops resenting people for being human. She becomes more understanding, yet more protective of her own boundaries. This is a balance she could never achieve before relying fully on Allah. As her heart matures, she discovers something beautiful. Her relationship with Allah feels personal. It feels real. It feels alive. She speaks to Him more. She trusts Him more. She consults Him in decisions that once caused her sleepless nights. She feels His presence in moments of vulnerability. She finds herself crying to Him in the early hours of the morning, not because she is desperate, but because she finally feels safe enough to be honest with Him. Her worship becomes deeper. Her salah becomes a refuge. Her dua becomes a conversation. Her patience becomes a testimony of her trust. And gradually she becomes a woman who moves through life with a calm that others may not understand. People might think she has become distant, but she has simply become selective. They might think she no longer needs them, but she has simply learned to need Allah more. They might think she has become stronger, and they are right, but not in the way the world defines strength. She has become strong because her heart is no longer in the hands of people who are unstable. Her heart belongs to the one who never changes. By the time she reaches this stage, she is not the same woman who once begged for attention, who once feared abandonment, who once searched for her worth in the reactions of others. She is a woman grounded in tawakkul, clarity, and peace. The kind of peace that can only be gifted by Allah to a heart that finally returns to Him fully. But her journey does not end here. There is one final realization that ties all the lessons together. The moment she understands that every step, every hardship, every loss, every disappointment was designed by Allah to bring her back to Him in the most intimate and transformative way. As she absorbs the peace that comes from relying only on Allah, a final and profound realization settles into her heart, one that ties together every moment of her journey. Everything she went through was designed to bring her back to Him. Not one hardship was random. Not one disappointment was meaningless. Not one loss was without purpose. When she looks over her life with honesty, she begins to see a pattern that was invisible to her while she was in the middle of the pain. A pattern of divine care, divine precision, divine arrangement. A pattern that reveals that Allah never left her, never ignored her, never abandoned her. Instead, He was shaping her, redirecting her, and purifying her in ways she could not have understood at the time. This understanding does not come from wishful thinking. It comes from experiencing how everything she thought was breaking her ended up building her. How everything she believed was destroying her ended up elevating her. How everyone she thought she lost was replaced by something better, sometimes in people, sometimes in opportunities, and sometimes in spiritual growth she didn't know she needed. This final lesson is not about looking back with sorrow, but looking back with clarity. It is about recognizing the hand of Allah in the chapters she once wished had never happened. She realizes that if her life had gone according to her plans, she would not be the woman she is now. She would still be depending on people who were not good for her heart. She would still be tied to relationships that weakened her connection with Allah. She would still be living in illusions that kept her spiritually stagnant. She would still be carrying wounds she refused to examine. She would still be searching for worth in places that could never provide it. Allah, in His mercy, interrupted her plans because He knew the path she was choosing was beneath what He intended for her. There is a moment in her reflection when she asks herself honestly, would she have turned back to Allah with this level of sincerity if everything in her life had gone smoothly? And the truth she finds in her heart is uncomfortable but undeniable. She returned to Allah deeply because life pushed her to. Had comfort continued uninterrupted, her dua might have remained shallow. Her worship might have remained routine. Her reliance might have remained mixed with attachment to people. Hardship, loss, and disappointment stripped away everything that distracted her and left her with nothing but her need for Allah, and that was the greatest gift hidden inside the pain. She begins to see that the people who left did not exit her life accidentally. Their departure was written with wisdom. If they had stayed, she would have continued shrinking herself to please them. She would have continued compromising what mattered. She would have continued tolerating what harmed her emotionally and spiritually. Allah removed them because her heart was worth protecting, even when she did not protect it herself. She also realizes that the opportunities she lost were never meant for her. If she had received them, they would have brought stress she wasn't ready for, responsibilities that would have crushed her, or temptations that would have weakened her relationship with Allah. What she called missed chances were actually closed doors designed to keep her aligned with her true purpose. And perhaps the hardest truth she embraces is that even her deepest heartbreak served a purpose. It humbled her, it softened her, it forced her to confront parts of herself she had ignored. It made her more empathetic to the pain of others. It made her more aware of her own emotional patterns. It taught her boundaries. It taught her dignity. It taught her that a heart tied too tightly to people will be pulled away from Allah, and a heart tied to Allah will never be owned by anyone else. This final lesson is where she stops asking, "Why did this happen?" and starts asking, "What did this teach me?" She sees her journey not as a punishment, but as a curriculum. A personalized curriculum written by the one who knows the hidden corners of her heart. Every hardship became a teacher. Every disappointment became a lesson. Every loss became a moment of awakening. And every tear became a dua that brought her closer to Allah. She also realizes that nothing was wasted. Not the nights she cried, not the days she lost motivation, not the moments where she felt abandoned. Allah recorded all of it. Allah responded to all of it. Allah compensated her for all of it, sometimes in ways she recognized, sometimes in ways she didn't. She begins to appreciate that Allah answers even the duas she never verbalized, the ones she only felt, the ones she feared to say out loud, the ones she whispered between breaths. She sees now that Allah was listening long before she started speaking to Him sincerely. This understanding changes how she views the future. She no longer fears it. She no longer clings to outcomes. She no longer worries about who will stay or leave. She no longer panics when plans fall apart. She knows now that nothing leaves unless Allah wills, and nothing arrives unless Allah sends it. This certainty frees her. It allows her to walk into tomorrow with dignity rather than fear. She steps into the future with a heart that is wiser, calmer, and more connected to Allah. She has learned the lessons she once resisted. She has accepted truths she once avoided. She has embraced a level of tawakkul she once thought was beyond her. She is no longer the woman who waited for someone to save her. She is a woman who knows that Allah was saving her all along, saving her from people, from circumstances, from illusions, and sometimes even from herself. And now she understands the deepest truth of all. When Allah becomes the center of her heart, nothing can break her, because everything she went through brought her exactly to this point, back to Him, with sincerity, with clarity, and with peace. O Allah, the one who sees what no one sees and hears what no one hears, we ask you to heal every heart that has been carrying more than it can express. O Allah, lift the burdens that have exhausted your servants and replace them with a peace that only you can place within a heart. O Allah, for every disappointment we faced, grant us wisdom. For every loss we endured, grant us compensation. For every hardship we walked through, grant us closeness to you. O Allah, purify our intentions, strengthen our trust, and make our reliance upon you alone. Protect us from attaching our hearts to what was never meant to hold them. Protect us from people who are not good for our faith. Protect us from choices that lead us away from you. O Allah, let every closed door be a pathway towards something better. Let every unanswered prayer be answered with something more suitable. Let every painful moment bring us closer to your mercy. O Allah, grant us contentment with your decree, patience with your timing, and certainty in your wisdom. Place light in our hearts, clarity in our minds, and tranquility in our path. O Allah, make us among those whom you guide, protect, elevate, and never leave to themselves for even the blink of an eye.